We're going to look at perimeter, area, and circumference. Perimeter is where you add all the sides of the lengths of any figure. So we've got it written as the sum of the lengths of the sides of a polygon. Remember, a polygon is a closed geometric figure. Area is the number of square units the polygon encloses. Its area, for instance, if I had a figure that looked like this, the area is the space taken up inside. Now, for certain figures, we have formulas for perimeter and area. For a square, the formula for the perimeter, first of all, if we have a square, and remember a square has 4 congruent sides, so let's say our square has side length S. The formula for the perimeter of a square, well, if we added up all the sides, we'd have S plus S plus S plus S. Better way to write that is just 4 times S. And that gives us the perimeter. Now, to find the area, we know the area of a square is side times side. Again, we don't write it as side times side, we write it as side squared. All we do is, if we know the value of the side, we substitute the information into our formulas and solve. For a triangle, if we have a triangle and we know that we have side A, B, and C, for the perimeter, we know the perimeter is going to equal the sum of the sides. We just add all the sides together. Now, to find the area, though, we need to know some additional information. We need to know the height of the triangle. Now remember, if we're going to measure height, we're going to stand up straight. We're not going to slant or lean. So our segment has to be straight, which means it will form a right angle with this base, wherever it is. So the area formula for the triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. Now all you've got to do to find the base and the height is look for this right angle. One segment will be the base, one segment will be the height. For a rectangle is different from a square in the fact that instead of 4 congruent sides, we have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are congruent. These 2 sides are congruent, and these 2 sides are congruent. And we normally label these as length and width. Now they could also be labeled as base and height, because remember, a rectangle has 4 right angles. Either way you want to label them is just fine. So for the perimeter of a rectangle, we would do length plus length, which is 2 times length, plus width times width, which is 2 times width. So we've got 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Or if we were to substitute in base and height, 2 times the base times 2 times the height, plus 2 times the height. For the area of a rectangle, again we're multiplying side times side. So we've got length times width. Now, a circle, we haven't talked much about a circle. We're going to study a whole section on circles later on in the year. A circle always has a name, and it's named by its center. So if we called this circle P, we would write it as circle P. Perimeter applies to sides. Notice up here in our definition of perimeter, we're talking about the length of the sides. Instead of perimeter with a circle, we call it circumference. And circumference is a capital C. To find the circumference, we need to know what either the radius, remember the radius is from the center to a point on the circle, or if we had the diameter. The diameter, let's mark this as the radius first. Or we could have the diameter. The diameter goes from one point on the circle through the center to an opposite point on the circle. A diameter is actually 2 times the radius. It's radius plus radius. So somewhere in here, we're going to label this a lowercase d for diameter. The diameter is the entire length across the circle through the center. So we've got 2 ways we can write circumference. Circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. Now remember, pi is the ratio of circumference to the diameter. It's approximately 3.14, but we've got a pi button on our calculator that we want to use. So we've got pi times diameter, or if it's easier because we're given the radius, circumference is equal to 2 times the radius times pi, which we just write as 2 times pi times the radius, 2 pi r. Area of a circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. Now that's not 2 times the radius, that's radius times radius. That's how we get radius squared. We're going to do some examples of these in class. Right now, I just want you to get the basics, the formulas down, and learn them. We also have an area addition postulate, which tells us that the area of a region is the sum of the areas of its non-overlapping parts. Now, what we're actually talking about here is if we had a figure that was to look something like this, and I asked you to find the area of this figure, what we would do is use what we call auxiliary lines, helping lines. Block this off into figures that are familiar to us, like rectangles and squares, or circles if we had them. Find the area of one shape, like this square. The area of this shape looks like a rectangle, and the area of this shape looks like a square, and add them all up. And that would give us the area of the entire figure. And we will do an example of this in class as well.